Could it be true that Jesus Christ did not actually die on the cross, but rather he was merely misdiagnosed to be dead? Perhaps he was just in a coma or unconscious, and people thought he was dead and put him in the grave. And then he woke up and came out later, and people began to believe that he magically came back from the dead. Is that a possibility, like some people claim or some people argue? Well, these things certainly do happen. Things like misdiagnosing someone to be dead happens. Um, well, maybe not so often now, but it used to happen in the past. But it's not the case with the death of Jesus Christ, and there are several reasons why we can confidently say that Christ's death was not a misdiagnosis. To begin with, I would, well, in the video, I would mainly focus on the way he died or way he approached the point of death, even for someone who wants to argue that he did actually die. He just came to the point of death, but he didn't die. Now, after Pontius Pilate has given Jesus Christ over to the religious elite and the soldiers to be taken away and be crucified on the cross, they did not directly take him to the cross to crucify him. Instead, they decided to have some fun with him. They put him through humiliation and emotional torture by blindfolding him and punching him on the face and asking him to prophesy who punched him, because, you're God, right? You should be knowing everything. And then they went on to physical abuse. They weaved a crown with thorns and pressed it onto his head. And so he started bleeding from his head. Then they started to beat him up and whip him. Whipping not just with any whips, but these brutal, cruel Roman whips. These Roman whips used to have multiple ropes coming out of it, and each rope at the end would have a metal hook, like a fishing hook. Now, every time you whip someone, these ropes with their metal hooks at the end would go and clamp the person's body. And then when you pull the hook back, they tear the flesh. Imagine getting whipped by that whip. Jesus Christ was whipped with such whips multiple times, nearly 40 times, I guess. Now, after all this physical abuse, you could try to picture what he would have looked like. A mess with blood all over, bleeding from his head, bleeding from back and front through the whiplashes and the beating by rods and the punching that he received on his face. Now, after they have done all of this, they made him carry a heavy wooden cross all the way up the hill of Calvary, to a place called Golgotha, where they finally crucified him. Now, imagine how much blood loss he would have experienced from the time they started abusing him to the time when he finally managed to get to the top of the hill. Bible records that on the way he was so weary that he could not carry the cross. They had to call someone for a brief period to assist Jesus to carry the cross. Now, by the time he went to the cross, he would have already lost a significant amount of blood. Well, that's not the end of the story, right? They, instead of just tying his hands and feet to the wooden cross and just leaving him there for dead, what they did is they nailed him to the cross. They put nails through both his hands and his feet. Now, if the whippings and beatings beforehand did not kill him, these would have killed him. Imagine losing blood from your hands and feet while hanging on a wooden cross. Your body's weight is pulling you down, and these nails, probably the wounds would be pulling down from the nails. Imagine the physical pain and torture and the blood loss that would occur there. So by the time he was on the cross, he was bleeding from his head, from his body, from his arms, and from his feet. Wouldn't that kill a person? Someone would say, no, maybe not. Maybe he somehow managed to survive. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe he still had some breath left in him. Maybe. But the Bible records for us that Before the body was taken down from the cross, the Roman soldiers wanted to make sure that this guy died. So one of the soldiers took a spear and put it through the side of Jesus Christ, through his ribs, and it says blood and water came out of his side. It doesn't necessarily have to be water; it could be serum or any clear bodily fluid. But the thing is, Christ was so drained that most of his blood was lost, and whatever's remaining came gushing out along with some of the fluids from the body. He was that badly wounded. Now that is a sign that that person is clearly dead. Some people might say, maybe he still managed to live somehow magically. He still managed to live, and he probably just went into a coma. With all the trauma, he went into coma. All right, I'll grant you that for the sake of the argument. If he was in coma, the next step would be the burial process. Now, it was already the end of the day, and by evening 6 p.m. for Jews, Sabbath would begin, and they wouldn't want to touch any dead bodies or want to have anything to do with dead bodies on the day of Sabbath. So they were in a rush to put the body in the tomb. They didn't even embalm the body. They just wrapped the body in linen shrouds and put the body in a tomb. Now, the tomb is not what we would imagine it to be today. It was not putting the body in a coffin and putting it in the ground. The tomb that Jesus Christ was placed in was actually cut in a rock, much like a mini cave. So they make a hole in a rock, put the body inside it, and seal the tomb with a heavy rock at the entrance. So that's how Jesus was buried. Now, imagine if Jesus Christ did not really die and was merely unconscious or was in coma, as some would argue. Think of it. You are saying, in a sense, that this person who was beaten, whipped, and speared to death, if he somehow miraculously escaped death, after that he was left in a cold grave for 3 days, and he magically regained consciousness and energy to roll the heavy stone at the entrance of the tomb and manage to run away and escape from the 2 Roman guards who were guarding the tomb. How probable is that? I would say, to believe that, one would have to have more faith than to believe that Jesus Christ was raised from the dead by the power of God, isn't it? Now, also another point to keep in mind here, if the argument that Jesus' death was a misdiagnosis and he was just merely unconscious or was in coma and then he woke up and came back, if that were true, what do we do with the disciples? Now, when he had gone back, they would obviously see him being disfigured, almost dying, barely alive. They would have had to keep him in secrecy and mend his wounds, attend to him, and take care of him until he recovered. Now, let's say he magically recovered from all of that in a month's time, and then he was making some public appearances to other followers of him. Now, the disciples obviously would understand that Jesus never really died. He was merely in coma, and that he gained his consciousness and came back. So that would prove, but that would tell them that whatever claims he made before he went on to cross, that he would be killed and that he would come back to life on the 3rd day, are a lie, because he didn't really die. And so if they know that he did not die, but he was merely unconscious and he came back, that would make it, that they would understand that he was lying to them beforehand. And obviously no liar can be considered as a god, let alone no liar can be considered as a good teacher, let alone God. Why would they go ahead and tell everyone a lie that he rose from the dead? Now, we're going back to the previous video I made. What would they gain? They know what would happen to them by telling that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. If they know for sure that this dude is not God and that he did not come back from the dead and that he's beaten badly and he needed their assistance to recover, why on earth would they go ahead and spread a lie and lose their lives for standing up for that lie? Now, this is not the only argument I have for people who reject the resurrection or the death of Christ, but I believe this is a simple point to consider. In the next video, I would present more evidence for the resurrection of Christ and the reliability of Christ. Oh, by the way, you may be thinking in your mind, well, Paul, all these points you're saying this happened, this happened, this happened. You're saying all of that based on what's written in the Bible. Now, what if it's not true? What if it's not accurate? What if they exaggerate it? How can you trust what's written in the Bible? Do you have any better argument than just saying, what's the point? Why would they lie? Yes, we do. Yes, I do. I will present in the next video the evidence for the reliability and trustworthiness of the scriptures, of the writings that are in the Bible. Now, but for now, I will leave you with this one. Please consider, is it reasonable to believe in a ridiculous claim that a person who was so badly beaten and and left to bleed to death did not actually die, but was merely unconscious or was in a coma and came back to life on his own, gained enough strength to leave the tomb and escape the guards and get back up to normal in a month's time and give public appearances? Is that reasonable to believe that? And if it's not, why is it that people want to hold on to such arguments instead of accepting that God raised Christ from the dead? Is it because there is no evidence for the resurrection, or is it because people merely don't want to accept that Jesus came back from the dead? It's for you to think. Also, a last note, this is for people who want to believe that Jesus Christ is a good moral teacher, but not really a supernatural being or God. Here's the thing. If Jesus did not die and was merely unconscious, but started to claim that he died and rose back from the dead after he recovered, that would make him a terrible liar. And no liar can be called a good teacher. Moreover, Jesus Christ claimed on several occasions equality with God. No good teacher claims to be God. Only lunatics does. So either Jesus is who he claimed to be, that is God's Son and God himself, or he's a crazy lunatic. There is no middle ground. There is no way you can say he's a good teacher and deny his deity. Think of that.